Greetings, engineers. This week's mission is an electric large grid ship journeying to Mars. It's about time we went to some more interesting planets. We've been making the Earth-like planet a lot more interesting by throwing insane, crazy reavers and orcs and whatever else we could find, throw them at us. But this ship is an electric large grid ship built specifically to go to Mars. It's very small and minimalistic for a large grid ship. It's got a tower on the top with a pair of guns and a docking port, and the idea was that we would be able to dock in orbit, and then the jump drive down the back of this ship can haul another ship to Mars. But that didn't quite go to plan, and it went to Mars on its own because of the classic space engineers. Someone else got in their ship and none of their ships worked for no apparent reason, bug, that we just couldn't shift. So co-pilot was grounded. I'd already taken off and gotten ready for the rendezvous in outer space, so I was a bit late to change plans. So this is the little co-pilot seat down the bottom there with a view out through that little sort of stairway. Double reactor, plenty of juice. Shield control, that's a separate offline box full of ingots. Survival kit, obviously, going to a new place. All plumbed into a row of cargo that's in the spine of the ship. So the spine of the ship is cargo at the front, batteries down the back, and then on either side of it we've got assemblies, etc. And at the nose here, got a pair of blast doors protecting the front of the cockpit, so that it's got a natural cockpit view, but it's also got a little bit of armour. It's mostly a shielded ship, not really an armoured ship. It's one shield. It's got one of each shield type: the integrity close quarters shield and the bubble shield. It's got them both. So here we are, ready for liftoff. Going for a jet only, not using the ion engines liftoff. There's 4 large ion engines pointing downwards and 1 big ass jet engine pointing downwards. So I'm just going with a pure jet takeoff just to see if it can lift this full of cargo, which it can, but as you can see it's accelerating upwards quite slowly. Does the job though. So that jet engine is just for lift in the lower atmosphere. There's no hydrogen thrusters on this ship. There's a hydrogen tank and an oxygen tank. And the ions are a bit weak at this level. As we're going up, we'll start to have a loss of power from this jet pretty early in the piece. Surprisingly early loss of power. And then we'll kick the ions in and keep climbing. So I'm thinking we've got plenty of ion thrust with 4 large ion thrusters for liftoff. Would haul a bigger ship than this, but I'm hauling plenty of cargo. I've got exotic materials, lots of uranium, naquita bars for making stargates on Mars. All sorts of shiny extra toys piled into the cargo, so I wanted to make sure we had plenty of lifting thrust with it. So on either side of the spine of the ship is just the 2 large ions on each side facing down. Then behind it is the engine. Because the ions are 2x4, they're even numbered, and then the big jet engine is a 3x3 and odd numbered. So spacing them out on the ship was a bit of a pain. So I just ended up with a giant jet down the back, and then immediately behind that is the jump drive, which is also 3 wide. So if you look at the shape of the tail of the ship, it's just a giant jet engine with some batteries on the side, followed by a jump drive hanging out the back and an ore detector hanging off the back of that, and then it's just armour plating over the jump drive. There's no cabin back there. You can't walk around and weld the jump drive or anything like that from the interior. It's just all sealed off separately. So at this point, the ion engines are kicked in, jet engines. They're both working using the classic thrust override system. This is obviously a very vertical takeoff ship with all the main thrust on the bottom. I find that's a preferable configuration. You're going to end up with a lot of engines somewhere. You're always going to have a certain amount pointing back so that you don't die of boredom when you accelerate. But as far as the bulk of the engines go, I like to put them on the bottom, have a nice casual let's just go straight upwards takeoff until gravity is less of a problem. And then I can switch to a flying forward configuration using much less engines because I don't need a lot of engines, the gravity's gone. I only have 2 little ion engines facing forwards for braking, because if you've got a lot of your thrust oriented downwards, it's very easy to brake by just flicking your nose up and presenting your belly to whatever target of doom you're rushing towards, and that'll slow you down nice and quick. So I don't have braking issues despite the lack of braking engines. Don't have lift off, take off, escape the planet's gravity issues because of a lack of rear engines. I just go nuts with the engines on the bottom, and then I know I can just rush straight upwards, straight out of a gravity well whenever needed. So we're climbing, nice and high up now. Less than half gravity, many kilometres above the surface. Generally in a nice cruisy spot. I can look to reconfigure to thrusting forwards, but I generally just, with these thrusters on override, it really is cruisy to just control them, crank them up to whatever's needed, and you've just got hands off flying then. Just wait until you get up to the stratosphere and just keep an eye out for red blips as you go at this point. Wait for that gravity to diminish. Keep an eye out for nasty things that may want to kill me. Pretty high up now. So overall, perfectly usable ship. Probably overkill on the lift engines, but you always want a bit of overkill on the lift engines. You don't want to chuck in just that little bit more cargo, pick up some supplies or goodies from somewhere, and then find out that that was enough to push you over the edge and you no longer have enough lift to escape some planet you're trapped on. But that is the difficult part of the journey over, really. Trying to escape the Earth-like planet is often your biggest challenge. Obviously I've got a nice stockpile of uranium and thruster components, so I'm not having to go the hydrogen route just to escape from the Earth-like planet nowadays. I can actually build all electric ships like this one, go sailing off in them. Definitely the way to do things, I think. When you've just got days worth of power and a jump drive, you can potentially just cruise around the stars a bit. So I end up with these ships with crazy downward looking thruster configurations that don't look very sporty because they haven't got a lot of backward thrusters. And down on a planet, if I had to land and maneuver this ship, there would potentially be problems. These ion drives on an Earth-like planet, there's not really enough of them to maneuver well, and my only jet engine faces down. It's designed to get me up in the air and maybe act as a bit of a electric parachute when I'm coming back down. But the overall plan for this ship is not to come back down to the Earth planet. It's got a jump drive, so I can jump it back to the edge of the gravity well of the Earth planet. I can piggyback things on it using the top and bottom connectors, and I can then jump drive those to Mars or wherever else our various ships need to go. So it's potentially a bit of a space tug. That giant jet engine in the middle was mostly for this one single takeoff. After this, it's probably not going to get a heck of a lot of exercise. I don't know how much we need a jet engine in the Mars atmosphere. So let's do an old school wipey maneuver. Got our bubble shield up. We're looking very tough. We're up above the gravity well, and in the distance I can see a pale brown dot of a planet that looks very Mars-like. The moon may have been on the entire other side of the planet for us, and a bit of a pain in the butt, but at least Mars turned out to be directly above our base, which is reasonably convenient at least. So we just orient in on Mars, crank up the awesome power of 4 entire small ion engines to push me towards it a bit. More importantly, you got to do the maths for your jump drive. So I don't know if it's the same on every single person's server, but 2,000 kilometers seems to be the go for a Mars jump. Not that I knew that. So my first jump, I tried 1,000 kilometers, basically half the max capacity of the jump drive, just to see how much of the distance I'd eat up. So looking at the footage now, it's pretty obvious that you need 2,000, but I was unwilling to throw myself through hyperspace and end up getting lost in space like Will Robinson, so I was doing it in smaller increments, trying to gauge my way there. So Mars or bust. Once you're out of that gravity well, you can of course just kill your dampeners and just fart along at cruising speed. You should expect the game to just randomly zero out your velocity every so often, because that's a fun feature. But apart from that, you can just skim at mad speeds through the asteroids towards your destination, looking at beautiful Mars sunrises on the horizon, etc. So I gradually shuffled closer to Mars, stage by stage. Stopped to get some nice sunlight pickies. Got my automatic opening control on the front doors there, so if my pilot needs a better view. If you're flying in a cramped area, you can often get restricted in your use of an external camera. As a general rule, I just fly everywhere with an external camera. It's just the easy way to fly. Screw the cockpit. But just in case I'm in a tight space, it's good to be able to pop those doors open and look straight out the front windows of the cockpit. So I've got a button rigged up on the dashboard Right in the middle, surrounded by a yellow bat symbol, is a button that pops the doors for me. It's the only button on my dashboard, it's the only one I need. So, a couple of George Lucas iris wipes and we're closer to Mars than ever. So round about the edge of the Mars gravity well, you drop yourself a waypoint for warping in later, and then you just swoop in and let the gravity carry you down, switch your ore detector on, flatten yourself out when you get down low, and go snuffling around for some valuables. So there was a nice icy patch on the poles, and even though we've got a decent uranium stockpile, it's always nice to have some quick access to ice for various kinds of fuels and energies. So my detector's busily detecting, I think silicon and iron, and something vaguely valuable was stumbled across early. And down at this level, we're only a couple of 100 meters from the surface, so the ion maneuvering capabilities is pretty low. I've got the jet engine switched on. How much of the work it's doing I never really tested out, but I noticed that my maneuverability was in the sucking area when it came to these ions. So the Martian atmosphere is definitely unfriendly to ions, but seems less so than a Earth atmosphere. I wouldn't be super confident landing this thing on the Earth-like planet anymore. I think it lives in space now. So in we come for a nice smooth landing. The key to a good landing is to be going sideways at a reasonable velocity as you touch down. Any pilot will tell you that. And you want a nice cloud of Martian regolith dust being kicked up, full of nice salty perchlorates. We want to bathe our ship in that. Swing her around, drop her down, and clamp that one big foot that we have on the nose. Switch off the jet engine, it's kicking up all that dust, and we are down on Mars. Comfortably sat down straight over some silver and some gold. So my usual reflex is of course to dig a foxhole in this game. So the plan is to dig that foxhole and drop a Stargate and other essentials in it. Are we looking at the map of this planet upside down or something? It's a barren, featureless wasteland out there, isn't it? Such a picturesque Mars. Okay, I thought you'd be getting bored with the other wipes, so I'd switch it up a bit. So, crack out my big drill, start shoving it in the hole till exciting things happen. That is how we do it. Get a bit of a diagonal foxhole down into the Martian dirt, and we build this. Slap in a little Stargate and a DHD, dial up home so that it's all registered. Got a half-built battery there, a reactor on top of it, and some storage on top of that. Keep on building, finish the battery, put a nano assembler and a survival kit tacked onto the side of that cargo box, and we've got the beginnings of a little base here. The reactor gave the battery a bit of an extra charge. It's all juiced up, it's all ready to go, and we are ready to start work on Mars, glorious Mars.